If you've ever had any doubts about spirits being real, this story is going to completely change your mind. And I do want to add that all of the paranormal stories that I share on here are real. This is the type of content that you're into. Feel free to follow along. I post every single day. For as long as Nikki can remember, she has always been extremely sensitive to the paranormal world. When she was about 15 years old, her best friend passed away. Nikki became severely depressed after this happened, and she felt like her friend kept trying to pull her to come visit her at the graveyard. Nikki tried to put it off for as long as she could, but when she turned 18, she decided to go visit her friend. That night, when she got to the cemetery, she realized that she had entered in the wrong side of the cemetery. All of the graves she was seeing were from the 1600s, 1700s, and so on. This really fascinated Nikki, and she wanted to know how all of these people from so long ago had passed away. She decided to place her hand on one of the stones to see if she could feel anything. Right away, she was almost startled, and she felt like something was standing behind her. She then heard this raspy laugh coming from a woman right behind her. But it was almost like this woman couldn't breathe or talk. She could only let out this forced laugh. Thinking that it was her cousin who she had come with, she turns around, but there's no one there. At this point, Nikki decides that it's time to go. As she's walking out of the cemetery, she feels something hit her face really hard. It was almost like a branch, whatever it was, stung. She then looks up and sees a man and a woman in their 20s walking away from her. The woman had a long, pink type of 1700s dress that was stained with blood, and the man had a pointy hat. They were walking away from her and disappeared behind a tree. This looked to be so real and so vivid that Nikki yelled out, asking if they needed any help, but of course, no response. Her cousin happens to look up at Nikki and get a really close look at her face, and he gasps. Nikki had all these little pink dots all over her face, and there was blood coming out of them. They decided to go back to the previous stone that Nikki had laid her hand on and read what the person had passed away from. And the stone was of a woman who had been gagged and had her mouth sewn shut. Her death year was 1745. Nikki was never able to figure out who the man was that she saw, but till this day, seeing any type of Victorian era type of clothing or anything on TV completely freaks her out. She could also feel all of the pain that the woman went through right before her death. Until this day, she can't figure out what could she have done to have caused such a horrible death.